everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in creating this Lady Danbury wire necklace. It's just 2 gauges of wire and a bunch of beads. If you do need any supplies, check out the links below to shop with us online. I suggest you go through your stash, pick out some great color matches, grab your wire, and let's get started. For this Lady Danbury necklace, you are going to need 2 gauges of wire. I'm using artistic wire in 24 gauge and 20 gauge. The 24 gauge, if you do want to go a little bit thinner, you can go down to 26. And if you want to go a little thicker, you can go up to 18. I would not suggest going the opposite ways. Either thinner works for the smaller one or a little bit thicker works for the thicker one. Don't go down to a 22 or up to a 22. It's just not going to work right for you. In addition to those, you want 3 pliers to work with your wire. You're going to be working with a round nose pliers, a wire cutters, preferably a flush cutter, as well as a needle nose plier. The needle nose plier, you want to make sure that it doesn't have any ridges in the side. It can be a bent or a flat nose pliers. To begin your piece, you're going to need approximately 2 feet of your 20 gauge wire, and you're going to use upwards of 10 feet, possibly even 12 to 15 feet of your 24 gauge wire. To make it manageable, I want you only cutting 24 inches of the 24 gauge wire. So we're going to begin with 24 inches of both the 20 gauge as well as the 24 gauge wire. Go ahead and take your wire cutters and cut those into that length, and then we're going to gather up our beads to start our design. To keep this a little bit more manageable and to stay in frame, you are going to have 2 feet of the 10 or of the 20 gauge wire. I'm just working with a small 5-inch piece in order to keep it in frame so you can see it a little bit better. So you're going to have a long piece. At the end of that long piece, I want you to grab either a pen or a Sharpie marker, something with a round end that you can make a round loop. I'm going to go back about 1 inch to 1.5 inches on the design, and I'm going to round the wire around the pen so that I have my long piece, and yours is going to be 2 feet going back there, 24 inches, and you have a short piece intersecting there. From here, I want you to grab your needle nose pliers. You're going to hold right up prior to the wire crossing over itself. Doing so, you're going to hold right over top of that, and I want you to bend the wire just about 45 degrees. That's going to make a nice eye pin that's going to sit in the center if you draw a line from your long piece of wire up to the top. From here, you can hold with those needle nose pliers around this loop that you made. You just want to make sure that you're not holding creasing over top of that wire where it goes over top of itself. From here, take that shorter wire and wrap it around that longer wire once, twice, and 3 times. If you have a little bit of extra there, you're just going to take your needle nose pliers here, or I'm sorry, your wire cutter, cut off that extra little bit of wire, and then take those needle nose pliers again and pinch down on the wire. This is going to act as the end of our necklace in order for us to put our clasp or our closure on. I'll also show you how to make an additional link if you do want to have a little bit of an extender chain at the end of the piece. From here, we're going to add our beads onto our thicker wire, as well as use some thinner wire to do some twisting to add the beads in this nice, almost branching lilac way. Once you have your wire ready to go in your coiled eye pin with the long 24 inches after, as well as a 24-inch piece of the 24 gauge wire, you're going to think about your beads. On my piece in particular, I have some 7 by 15 millimeter leaves in the lilac color, some 6 millimeter Czech bicones, and those are in a nice white champagne luster, some 3 millimeter white pearls, 4 millimeter beautiful lavender colored Czech glass, as well as 3 millimeter rounds and 3 millimeter bicones in the light tanzanite and also the apricot color. In addition to that, I have some flower cups going along with that floral theme. Looking your stash and your stock, chances are you have a lot of random beads and materials that can be used perfectly in this type of design. To begin, I'm going to grab one of my 6mm, so this is my larger of my beads on here. And I'm going to add this to the end of my piece to make it easy for me to hold to put the clasp on. So I'm just going to slide that bead onto the end of my wire. And then I'm going to get ready with my 24 gauge wire. Now, once again, I only have about 10 inches. You're going to have 2 complete feet. You're going to end up using about 10 to 12 feet total of wire. So rather than starting with that whole long section of wire, I want you to just start with about 24 inches. It's manageable, and this design makes it very easy to add wire as you go. From here, I'm going to cross the wire over top of the 20 gauge. So I have the 24 crossed over top, and I have about 1/2 inch hanging over the edge. I want you to take the shorter piece of wire, or sorry, the thinner piece of wire, the 24 gauge, and I want you to wrap that 24 gauge wire just like I did 3 times around the thicker wire. Go ahead and take your wire cutters then and cut off that extra wire that's at the beginning. I like to have a little bit of that extra wire to hold on to, and I don't worry very much about the loss or the cost of that small piece because the art wire is very inexpensive. From here, because it's a thin wire, I can easily resolve that issue by pushing my coils right against my bead and then just taking my needle nose pliers and pushing that last little bit down and into place. Whenever you're working with wire, you want to make sure that you don't have any pieces that are sticking up that are going to grab on and scratch a neck or pull on clothing. From here, we're going to begin with our twisted design. So this twisted design, when you're looking at it, really is nothing more than what you would do to close a piece of bread. You're using that twister tie technique. I'm going to begin with 3 of my 3mm pearls and drop them onto my 24 gauge wire. And this 24 gauge wire, like I had said previously, you can, if you want to, use 26 gauge wire. That will work for this design as well, but you do not want to go thicker. It's not going to be nice and it's not going to be friendly toward the design. Leaving about 1/4 inch before the beads, I'm going to turn a 90-degree angle there. From here, I'm going to hold the wire and kind of pinch the pearls. I'm just going to kind of turn it over there and pinch the pearls. See how it's creating that little almost triangle shape? The wire is going over top of the 20 gauge, so the 24 is going over top of the 20. I'm going to hold that again as if I was getting ready to coil that wire around. And instead, I'm simply going to, in that same twister tie fashion, twist evenly those strands of wire. Pushing that up towards the design. I'm then going to bring that wire down toward the other side. On this other side here, I'll grab my lavender beads. So let me get out my 3 lavender beads. And you can do beads by 1, by 3, by 4. It's kind of up to you how you want it to be designed and how you want it to look. Grab a couple of my bicones there. And same deal on this side. I'm going to drop on 1, 2, and 3 of my 4mm beads. Let them drop down toward that 20 gauge wire. Give myself a little bit of space. Bend those almost in half, creating again that little triangle where the wire is sitting right next to it. See that space that's created? And then once again, I'm going to start twisting. That's going to create that little leaf effect. Once you think it's twisted tight, stop. You don't want to over twist this design because if you over twist the design, you can break the wire. From here, I'm going to wrap my 24 gauge once around the 20 gauge. After, I'm going to pick a bigger bead, say. So in this one here, I have my flower cup that I've picked. The next one I've done a couple turns and then I put one of my 4mm bead. Another time I put my 6mm bead on. So you can go in and choose how you're going to expand this and keep going with this same idea. If you want to add one of your flower cups, and my flower cups here are in my white lilac gold luster color, I can add a flower cup, let it drop down next to my piece here, add one of my beads to stop the bead from falling off. Take my wire, and 2 pieces of the 24 gauge will fit back between the wire, will fit back between the hole of the flower cup. So I'm just going to take the wire and take it right back out through. What's going to happen then is that bead is going to get pulled right into the middle of that flower cup. Same deal here. If it's nice and tight, these where your round nose kind of come into play. You can grab if it's too tight for you to turn and just do one simple little turn or 2 turns with your round nose pliers. And then I'm once again going to wrap around my 20 gauge. Now keep in mind, you're going to have this long piece here. So I have the camera fairly pulled back so you can see that technique and style. I'm now going to pull the wire or pull the camera closer so you can see it a little bit more in detail as I show you some more techniques, including how to add the leaf. Coming in now for a closer look. Usually I do a max of 3 or 4 of my little twists there prior to filling the space and just adding a bead onto the 20 gauge, again at that very long end. Once I add a bead on, I'll take the wire, go over top of the bead, and twist once on the other side. From here, I'm going to show you how to hang that leaf or like a briolette. I'm going to use some smaller seed beads. You don't have to. I have just some Duracoat opaque seed beads in 11/0 in the dark orchid. And on go my leaves. Again, 2 more seed beads. And then because the hole goes straight through like that, what I'm going to do, just like we did, hold it a little bit separated from your piece. Make that turn once again. And then one more time, just as so, grab that leaf and your wire and start to turn. Another one is on your piece now. Same deal to get to the other side. Go once around, grab my pieces. Now keep in mind, it's fun every once in a while to change it up. So here is 2 beads on my piece. And I'm going to keep those closer. That way they just make it have a little bit more of a full feeling. So I'm not going to leave any space. I'm just going to take the wire right away after those and go around the piece. So it really is kind of a free-form artistic interpretation of what you want it to be. The further out you leave space, the more twist and distance you have. The closer you put it, like this one here, you can see I twisted very close. This one I put seed beads in between. This one I use a pearl on the cap. So there's a lot of different techniques if you go back to the cover image that you can even pick out along the piece and see. After 3 or 4 turns, again, I'll put the bicone back on, go over top of the bicone, add some more beads into the twist, even if it's just 1 bead by itself, leaving a little space, and still doing that twisting technique. Again, a little helpful tool is your round nose pliers because you can get in there nice and tight. From here, add your next grouping of beads and keep going. What happens when you run out of wire? So say I just ran out of wire. Now what? You're going to cut a new piece of wire, and I would suggest, again, that 2-foot section. Take the piece of wire that you have that was left, pinch that down, and then you're going to simply start anew. Very simple. Grab your next piece of wire, intersect it on the 20 gauge, start that same process and technique where I do those 3 coils, just like we did at the beginning. Clip off that extra wire that's hanging out there, flat side toward the project. Push that down towards your piece, and now you're ready to go and start a whole nother section. You can do this as full or as loose looking as you want to, keeping in mind that the more beads and the more sections you put on, the fuller it's going to look. I loved playing with just the idea of using some of the bigger beads on the actual 20 gauge. You can see I used flower cups, 4mm rounds, every once in a while a little 3mm round, and then those bicones. Keep in mind as well, the bicones can come off and be used as little twisted beads hanging off to the side as well. So you're just going to keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep building along to get that nice full look that you get with this Lady Danbury. So I'm going to hold this just a little closer so you can see there's 2, and then I put on a small bead, 2 more, big bead, there's 3, big bead, 4, big bead, 2, big bead. So you can see the spacing and kind of what that looks like as you have it and pull that piece together. Once you're finished with your design, you should have a couple extra inches left over at the end. So I have my 1/6 millimeter bead, and I'm going to follow it up with a 4 millimeter bead. You should have about 5 to 6 inches of wire left after the end of the piece. And I want you to cut that down till you have about 4 inches remaining. So you're going to pretend that this little piece of wire here is my long piece attached the whole way to my necklace. It's just much easier to show this off that long piece of wire. So I'm going to pretend this is my bicone. Prior to this are all of my beads and my 4 millimeter bead. I've cut my wire down so I just have 4 inches. And I'm going to bend my wire at about 1.5 inches. So if you need to, you can get your ruler back out here. You're going to look at about 1.5 inches right there. And I'm going to bend my wire right about 1.5 inches, just folding it over right upon itself. To fold it over right upon itself, I'm even going to take my needle nose pliers here and just give a nice little pinch. Pinching the wire so it sits flat next to itself. It's going to run down next to the wire that's already there. And see how it is right there next to that 4 millimeter bead? Go ahead and grab right before that 4 millimeter bead. Take your wire and twist it 1 time around that 4 millimeter bead. If you have some extra wire, you can also, if you want to, twist it around between the 4 millimeter and your 6 millimeter bead. Just take your pliers then and do a nice little pinch and you'll have it there. You can also do this as an independent clasp off the piece, as you can see. From here, I'm going to go through and just kind of straighten it up, make sure that I don't have a lot of turns in it, because it might have gotten a little bit bent while you were making something. Grab again that handy dandy pen and turn the wire over itself. See how it has just a little bit of space there? Go ahead and take your needle nose pliers and bend that up about 40 degrees and you get your little hook. Now you can make this short like I did on this one. You can make it longer by using 2 inches instead of 1.5 inches. You can make it longer still by using 3 inches and bending back if you really want that drastic curvature look. This is just going to sit right after your piece, right at the end, and then this goes right into the loop that you've created. Because of its size and shape, you have no problem this coming off the neck. If you do want to create that little extender piece, that's very simple. That's just 2 eye pins created one after the other. To create that eye pin, most likely you have a piece of your 20 gauge wire kind of sitting around. Go ahead and take another piece of wire. Again, this one's about 4 inches or so. Just like we did at the start, grab that pen, turn the wire over the pen, go back into right before that loop starts over itself, turn that wire, hold it right there near that crease, and bend that wire at least 1 full rotation around itself. Cut off the extra wire, and you have your extra little link here. So this can be your extra link that's added to the end. I'm going to pinch down. And because of wire working, there's a reason I don't have my nails done. Wire working tends to shred up your nails a little bit. From here, you can add whatever bead you want. I have just one of the 4 millimeter beads right there. I'll add one of my bicones to this one here, because you can make this as its own independent unit by keep going and going and going on. I'll drop that down next to that coiled link, just like we did at the start of the piece. Except now, what I'm going to do is grab my round nose pliers, hold the wire right after your bead, and I'm going to bend the wire over the top of my round nose pliers. Switch from that top jaw of the pliers to the bottom jaw of the pliers. I have many wire working videos showing how to do this coiled eye pin, so make sure to check that out. Prior to coiling the eye pin, I'm going to link it into the previous eye pin loop. You can hold with your needle nose pliers or with your round nose pliers, again, just like we did when we did the turnover here. You're just going to coil that around itself as well. 1 or 2 coils with that nice 20 thick gauge, and cut that off. Go ahead and just make sure as you're doing this then that that is pinched down, so that way it's not going to grab on any dresses or anything that you may be wearing with this beautiful Lady Danbury design. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this Lady Danbury necklace. Remember, you can use a multitude of different styles of beads in shapes, sizes, and colors to create this beautiful wire working art piece. Remember, if you do need any supplies, check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Also remember to post your photos of your Lady Danbury necklace in our Facebook group for beading and joy making. I can't wait to see everyone's lovely creations. If you haven't already yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. And if you like this and want to see more wire working videos, make sure to comment below and give a little thumbs up. As always, have fun creating your Lady Danbury necklace.